troubles unwind. Sweet love of mine. Is it a strain on you now? Pulling you down. Tell me, my love, spread your wings. A new day has come again. Did my promises make it better? Healing in time.
Hello. Welcome to a new show, Like It Was. I'm Ketriana Yvonne, your host, and what I'm bringing is stories from trailblazers from the past to keep us up to date in the present and lead us into the future. And today's guest is Curly Hall.
Oh, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. Yeah.
Howdy, partner.
Howdy, partner. That's it. You know, many times, I said I would like to have someone of distinguishing come to this place who has a lot of credibility, and you are definitely the person.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And I welcome you to my home here, little lady.
And
We have a very beautiful thought going on in this particular place, which is it's a part of our house, and it's a part of our community facility, and it's a part of any welcome guest. The Federation of Black Cowboys and Black Cowgirls, we're all enjoying it, and so I would like you to enjoy it as well.
And what is the name of the house?
The house is called Curly's Cowboy Center.
Okay. And I have had the pleasure of being a part of Curly's Cowboy Center for the past couple of months and getting to know you.
Yes,
And
that's
it
right.
has deeply inspired me with your stories and your openness and just the historical facts and stories that you shared. So I just want to thank you for being a guest today, and I want to share these stories with the rest of the world.
Okay.
And so, tell me about how you first became. Well, tell me about yourself first of all, and the beginnings. Like before you became cowboy, how did you become Cowboy Curly?
Oh my. This is a long, long story that can be made very short.
Uh-huh.
I love the horses.
Okay.
And what happened is that many years ago, my wife, my father, and my father and my mother took me horseback riding. And during that time, it was kind of like a pony ride. We went out to Flushing, Lynn's Riding Academy. And when they took me there, I fell in love with the horses.
Mm.
And what had happened is that as I got older, more mature, 13 years old, because it was only 8 years old when they took me at first. When I got a little older and I could take the train by myself and everything, me and two of my other friends We used to go riding every Saturday and try to go on Sundays as well. You know, uh, we got to be extremely good in the horsemanship. And the riding academy, they used to let us go out on the trail rides by ourselves. You know, and boy, oh boy, young little fellas, kids riding horses, we was hooping and hollering. I remember the time when when you ride in the stables and things, and out on the bridle paths, you're not supposed to bring the horses back sweaty. You know, boy, oh boy, we used to bring some towels with us so that we'd wipe the horses down before they got back to the stable, because we used to hoop and holler with them. And we had a good. But do you know what? In order to ride, it used to cost $1.50 an hour to ride. Now it's like 80 something dollars to ride for an hour on a horse. I mean, it's a tremendous difference in pricing. We used to ride, take the train, but before that, the night before, the day before, we used to shoe shine, go shoe shining to make that $1.50. At the time, we were shining shoes for 10 cents of shoe. And then we say, if you want both shoes done, it's 15 cents. You know, I mean, it was like we used to come up with all kinds of tricks and gimmicks. But what had happened was that my mother was a barmaid at the time as well, and we used to go into the bar and stay there until about 12 o'clock at night, shining people's shoes who come in. You know, so and then we'd go up into Flushing where they sold all the cars, and go to the car dealers and shine their shoes.
Wow.
So we really had a hustle. So that meant that we could now go riding on Saturday and Sunday. That was $3 we had to make.
Okay.
So it was really enjoyable.
Okay, I want to go back to when you said when your parents took you to go horseback riding, did your father have, I mean, I know a lot of parents take their kids to maybe, it's a common thing to do, but did anyone in your family have a love of horses, or did they ever go horseback riding, or?
Well, you know.
And also, coming from, like you said, you're born in Queens,
That's right.
Jamaica.
That's right.
And so even that, the experience of being it's more also like urban cowboy.
Exactly right.
So I'm trying to see like where your father. So did he have any previous anybody else in your family ride or?
Have any previous experiences and stuff like that? Well, you know, funny you should ask me that. I do not remember my father as being a rider all the time, or having horses or involved. But him and a friend of his, I remember seeing an old picture in the album, and my father had his riding boots on, and his gears, they had little things that buckled out like over here and everything. And so I don't know how often he went riding, because I was still a little guy. However, he did ride, but to what extent I didn't know. You know, as time had rolled on with the riding, though, periodically I would go riding at the stable again, because life keeps moving on and changing. When it changes, you don't have as much time and to give yourself for pleasing and pleasurable and having fun, because then you start to try to get married and try to get all other kind of job, all kinds of things. You know, I speak about job. Let me make mention. Many years ago, I went to school for IBM. And when I came out of my high school, so when I went for IBM, I used to do a lot of key punching and stuff like that. And I got a job, and it was, but before I got that key punch job, I worked for American Telephone and Telegraph Company, and I worked for the welfare department. So what had happened was that one of the agencies said, "Hey, why don't you come and work for us?" This was right here in Queens. And I said, "Oh, of course I will," because they thought I was going to help them out. I went to work for them, and I quit my AT&T job. And when I went for that, I worked for them for about a month, and then they fired me. boy, oh boy, trials and tribulations. However, many things throughout my life, the worst things that happened to me turned out to be the best thing
Yeah.
that could have happened. And I really, as I look back on it, it was really a blessing that they let me go. Because now, what happened? Okay, I'm sitting around, I'm doing things at my house, painting my mother's house, you know, and a friend of mine, he said, hey, why don't you come and work with me and my dad? I said, what? He said, yeah, we're painting crew now. You paint like here, you paint your house, you know, you had a lot of good fun. I said, yeah. He said, well, come and work with us. I said, okay. So I went with his crew, and we did a lot of painting in Forest Hills development houses, and we worked out on the island in different mansions and things. You know, and one day, I remember one day, we were all sitting around having lunch, all the workers, you know. We had about 15 of us working. And we were sitting around, and they were talking about painting and doing different carpentry things in the house and fixing this. And you know what? I remember saying to them, you know, I don't want to be a painter. There's no prestige in painting. I want to wear a suit and a tie and be smooth, because I was thinking about the other world, Wall Street world and everything. You know, I'm thinking larger, you know, that I'm going to be clean and nice appearing, and that kind of thing. And that's why I went into IBM. So what had happened? I'm now doing painting. And so that was a new venture for me.
Right.
In this new venture, never recognizing what my life was going to be like, you know. So as I began, another contractor, he said, hey, because I didn't have work. See, construction and contracting work is, if you get the job, fine. If you don't have a job, it's fine, but you got to go find one. You know, you end a job, you start up a job. So a fella, Mr. Hooker, he said, hey, you know, you can come and work with me. And I said, okay. But he did some tile work. He did flooring work. He did carpentry. He did everything. So that's where I went, and I started learning the trades, different ideas on how to develop a house, make it a livable condition, that kind of thing. Boy, this thing can go on and on. I'm thinking, my mind is flashing back. I've got years of thoughts behind my head.
Right.
And I don't know how long I can sit here and tell you about them all, but anyhow, I'm going to try to cut them short. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So
from what you said so far, you went from the first company that you worked for, when you were doing the painting.
Yes.
And someone
Yes.
said, oh, come work with us. So who was that person to you? Or was it just a friend, or just...
No, he was just the person that I had met, Edward Hooker, at the lumberyard. I had met him at the lumberyard, and he said, hey, listen, I can use somebody to work. So I used to go to the lumberyard and wait around with some friends or talk to the guys and see if any customers would come in who needed painting. And they would recommend me quite a bit to do wallpapering and painting.
Right.
You know, so I would happen to be there, and just Hooker said, come on and work with me then. Come on. I said, okay. Do you know, when I started working with him, we worked until 4 o'clock in the morning trying to finish projects. I didn't care how long I worked. I was just there to work.
Right.
And he became so fond of me, and we became such a good team that we became developed. And then what happened is that we started getting some fire jobs and things of that kind. And he said, hey, listen, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 35% of my business, you know, if you stay and hang and work with. I said, okay, no problem, man, I'm here. So we constantly kept working. Then when we got in a fire job, I called a couple of my friends, Larry, who told me to work with his father. He wasn't working, so he'd come and work with us. So back and forth we did that. And as time went on, I learned the trades. But here goes another downfall that happened.
Mhm.
And what happened is that when we started to add up all of the money that was supposed to come in and that came in at the end of the job, because we were like doing 3 fire jobs at one time, and the money was supposed to come in, and it did, the checks come in. He's counting the money on the table, and he's paying the guys their salaries and things, and the fellas weren't there yet, you know, to get the salary, but he's paying me. Also, I said, well, what about my 35%? What about my 35%? He said, oh man, you just take this and that's it. I said, what? So he gave me a big jog.
Yeah.
A big jog at that time, and I accepted it. I took it. I said, but I know what's going to happen now. You know, in 1 week's time, I left him because I had to help him settle up what he was involved in. But 1 week's time, I started going out on my own. And that there change was a big change again. Now, paint stores, the lumber yards were recommending me, you know, to different clients. I started doing them, calling a couple of my friends to help me. Things, little by little, started to grow. Little by little. One thing led to a basement, led it with the kitchen. And the kitchen led into a dormer. And then we started doing dormers. And then we started doing all kinds of penthouses. I mean, I was on the move in my life, and I never knew. Now, by that time, I had gotten a couple of contracts with New York City. And it was with HPD.
Okay.
And it was what was called a 312 program at the time, many years ago. And they called me one of their best contractors, and I was getting their projects. But what happened was that I had got their projects, and then of course the city didn't pay when they told you they were supposed to pay. Pay on time, you know. Oh my gosh, that was a trouble. But anyhow, I ventured through that as well as being a part of that. You know, the thing about it was that my business kept growing and growing, never realizing what it was going to be in for. Trials and tribulations. I finally wound up with about 65 men working in New York on 7 buildings. When I bidded on that particular project, this was when Mayor Koch was creating the new 20-year, what would they call it, revitalization of Harlem. You know, and during that time, there were 48 buildings to be built and renovated. Actually, they renovated. And I bidded on 7 of them. I received a phone call, and that phone call told me, don't bid on this particular job. See, I didn't know really what the game was because I'm a young guy, and they said, don't bid on the job. It was one of the mafia guys who called me. And at the time, it was the Genovese family, you know, and so Genovese had went to jail, and he turned it over to Inner City Drywall. And Inner City Drywall was doing all the work, but they called me a threat to their organization because of the fact that I had all of the black employees in the what we had done. You know what we did? We had set up tap centers, what was called tap centers, and it was in Harlem. We had about 4 tap centers that the community would come and turn in their application. All the young men would come, and we got like 34 young men from the tap centers who were now working with us on these 7 buildings, 143rd Street, 7th Avenue, something of that kind. You know, while we was doing, the city used to bring in all of the people, new contractors or whatever, to see our buildings, the ones that we were doing, because they were saying, this is the way it's supposed to be done. They were holding us up,
Wow.
you know, as shining stars that was doing the buildings correctly and was creating and establishing the time schedules, making it all happen. You know what happened? We had a major problem come in. The unions came down. See, we were a non-union shop. We were paying prevailing wages. And prevailing wages is really more money than the unions pay. Because, see, the unions pay scale. But what happens is that they, on all the benefits and everything, they don't have to pay the overhead on those benefits.
Right.
But prevailing wage, we have to pay the men all of that prevailing wage, benefit monies and everything else. So it cost us more money, but yet we produced the job.
Right.
They came on the job to try to stop it now, but at that time we had 65 Hispanic and black men, and we've had some white men. Let's tell it like it is. They came with all of their Caucasian crews and stuff and picketed us. They will cross the street picking. Now this is in Harlem.
Right.
But you know what it was?
What?
At the time, there was what was called a coalition. The black brothers and sisters created a coalition of black people. And we had maybe 80% of the coalitions that were working with us. And so it became like a standoff. If I would have let the union people come in and take over, all of the black brothers would have had to leave the job.
Yeah.
All the Hispanics would have had to leave the job. They had
Because
some
they wasn't
union
a part of the
representation.
union.
Yeah, but I mean, this was pure fact.
Right.
So I held on with my 2 fingers in the dirt, holding on. I was like I was in a grave. And I was holding on. And so the union bosses called me down to their office. Me and my wife went down to their big plush office, big smoking cigars and stuff, round a big table longer than this room. Me and my wife with about 10 of their henchmen. And I remember them telling me, "You sign this or else." I said, "What? No, I'm not signing anything until I read it, you know." And the guy put his hand on the table like that and said, "You sign it or else." He turned red.
Wow.
He turned red, boy. And what happened when he turned red? He looked at me and I looked at him. I said, my, I ain't signing anything until I read it again. I had been calling them for a month to send me all of the rules and regulations.
Right.
I had been trying to communicate with them,
Right.
never giving me anything except that day.
So let me ask you, being that obviously at this particular time, I think as they would say, you didn't know who you were dealing with. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I kind of like knew. No, I wasn't naive at that time.
Okay.
I wasn't naive because I had known that Rodriguez was taking over. It was all in the newspaper.
Right.
Also, what had happened, I've got the articles. Genevieve sent to jail. And it had mobsters on Harlem Job. And that was them. And inner city drywall, and so they were mobsters on the Harlem Job.
Right.
But Rodriguez was Hispanic, and so he was a minority, so he was able to keep the faith
Yeah.
for them. And so what had happened was that when that came out, Mayor Koch had to let them all go.
Okay.
The thing came down on them. And they called me to try to take over all of their jobs. All the 48 buildings. I said, "Oh, no. It was just too much for me anyhow."
Right.
I was a little guy just trying to, trying to get over. I mean, this was big time salary. Do you know what happened? I needed $400,000 because of the fact that the city didn't pay me. They said, "Oh yes, they're going to pay me. They're going to my requisition. It'll take another week." Okay, I'm waiting. They didn't pay. So I had to go to get cash flow to pay them in. I went to Freedom National Bank in 125th Street. Freedom National Bank. I went there, spoke with the guys. I gave them all of my reference ideas and stuff. Spoke with the president. He says, "Okay, come back Monday morning and get the money. Check." Oh, I said, "This is great. I was going to get the check, man, to pay my men and to have a continuation on my project." Do you know what happened? I go Monday morning and I see this long line. I said, "Oh, they got a lot of people who want to put their money in. They're doing lots of business." You know what happened? The bank closed down. Freedom National Bank went out of business. Boy, that was a shock for me. Because now, where am I going to get this money to continue the project, to keep going with the project? It was truly a catastrophe. Woo! I don't know what to say about all of this, but
And wait, so when you went, this is only over a weekend that you signed.
no, it was a little bit more than a weekend.
Okay.
You know, when they told me come back on Monday,
Monday.
gave me a particular, it was like a week and a half. You know, it was like maybe 7 days went by when I was supposed to go and pick the money up.
So do you think? I'm not familiar with what happened to Freedom Bank or why they closed.
Right.
But do you know what happened or what was the cause? Do you think that could have been mob related?
No, I have no idea.
Well, no.
I don't know what happened, but what I did know that I then went to the city of New York again, who had a special program. I'm trying to think of what it was. However, I had put in for money, cash flow from them prior, maybe 2 months prior, and they said, "Oh no, we can't give you anything." I said, "But I turned in." They said, "Well, let us check and see if you're in Albany, if your paper's in." And so they checked and they found out I had, and I was certified to get the oh boy, I can't remember the name of it. It was a special program.
Right.
So within about another week's time, they were able. It was the fastest turnover in a loan that they ever did, ever. You know, they came through with the $400,000, and you know, I was able to continue the project at that time. But it was truly, and we finished the project. But you know, what had happened? Oh, I got to tell you, you know what happened also on that project? When
What
you're
happened?
working for the city, if there's ever any discrepancy, you've got to
Have a hearing.
no.
Oh.
You have to continue the project and then wait for a hearing or discussion or have your change orders reviewed and everything. But you cannot stop. So they bring me a new set of blueprints, a new set of ideas that I have to do before I do my original work. So now I'm saying, "Oh no, I'm not moving forward with this. I'm not. I can't." You know, the blueprints they brought me, after it was all said and done and everything, they didn't know where they came from. The architect had his stamp and seal on. They had no idea where this new order came from. But at the time, Tishman was the construction managers for the city. Oh, girl, I've got a story. This story is a really, it goes on and on because, see, now the union brought me a new contract, made the contract just for me. That was something. It said all of the great things, had maybe about 6 pages. And when it got to the last page, it said, "And therefore you will do no more work in the city without our approval. Therefore you now turn over 53% of your business and your 53% of your company to us." I said, "What? Are you crazy?" You know, so I said, "How can I get out of this?" I said, "No way." So you know what I did? I had lost, see, I have no hair now. I had lost all my hair in them several months that I was working there.
Wow.
You know what happened?
What happened?
I said, what can I do? I wrote a letter to them. I sent the letter in a telegram saying, thank you, but no thank you.
Mhm.
And that was it. I had hired a lawyer and everything, and he couldn't do anything to negotiate, but me sending him a letter, tell him I thank you for asking me, but no, I'm not interested at this time. And that was it.
Okay. I have a question. Okay. The pattern I see from the beginning of your stories, what would you say was what gave you this inner strength to say no to people that may have harmed you, threatened you? How did you feel? Because you telling the story, you don't tell a story like it was any kind of hesitancy, any kind of like, hey, what do you feel like? Was there a voice telling you, like, I'm with you? What gave you that strength?
Well, one of the things is that if I would have given in to them, the entire project I would have lost in a certain kind of manner. My family, when you sign the contract, because my wife and my son were involved in my construction business, they would have had to continue the business. They would have had to complete the job. But you know what happened also? During that time, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can say certain things of this kind. We had meetings. We had maybe about 8 commissioners come around a round table.
Mm-hmm.
And these commissioners all had agreed, this is making the story short. Bob Davis was one of the commissioners, Commissioner Fischetti, many different commissioners, because I was being held up as a bright, shining star.
Mm-hmm.
I was even going to be going into the Jacob Javits Center when they were building it.
Mm-hmm.
So what had happened was that all of the commissioners had agreed, pay not Cowboy Curly, but pay R.W. Hall, pay him his money. And they all gave a date, pay him in 3 days' time, get that check ready. So what had happened? There was another problem. When that came up, they said, oh, your requisition is now overdue. We cannot pay you because it's 30 days. It has to be renewed. What? But see, something else had been awry. One of the things was that during that time, the prevailing wage had gone up in scale.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, I bid it on the job at a certain prevailing wage price.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during the middle of the job, the price went up. So they said, construction manager said, oh, it's a rule of thumb that you have to pay it. But I said, this is not in my contract. Oh, but it's a rule of thumb. I don't have that kind of money to pay. You've got to pay me my additional money so I can pay them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now.
It's not rule of thumb.
Yeah, hey, there's a big issue going on here. And the big issue is if they paid me that money, they would have to pay the entire New York State contractors, all of them, the additional money.
Right.
So now I had the city against me because they're afraid they got to put out so much more money. Now they're backing off of me in the new game.
Uh-huh.
So,
your shining star.
oh, girlfriend, there was so much involved in me doing that project. Yvonne, what happened with the New York City Housing Partnership thing also, there were, like, if you can see this picture, turn around. Do you see this picture here? Right there?
Yes.
That's 50 homes that I had built.
Amazing.
Now, one of the things is that I had built homes prior to doing that particular development. However, it was like 14 and then 28, and then they gave me the 50. Yvonne, there was an organization, the New York City Housing Partnership, that only gave, or maybe they were only ones who were qualified, was the Bluestones and the different organizations. They were all Hispanic, Caucasian persuasion. And Deborah Wright and Kathy Wild said, let's put this together and have some minorities be a part of this. So there were 50 of us who turned in applications to become the department with the New York City Partnership. Out of that, I received a particular project. When I went to one of the meetings that they had, when they were announcing this, the newspaper announcement and the press conference, she says, yeah, but there is no minorities that we could find that could qualify this. And I heard that. And I stood out in the hallway when I said, yeah, but she doesn't know R.W. Hall yet.
That's right.
You know, she doesn't know me yet, you know, and that was a real defining moment in my particular life that I always remember challenging her words. And for sure, I became a part of the projects and the developments, and she called me their shining star in Queens because I was the one who was taking over the Queens locations. And it was really, really very pleasurable. Deborah Wright, she became deputy mayor with Giuliani, and at the time with Bloomberg, Rudy Washington, he was a contractor. He was a minority persuasion, black guy, but he had risen up in the ranks and everything. And I would go to him every once in a while and make mention of some of the problems that we had as black people trying to participate with the city. And then he would look into it and find out that certain things were happening, and he would try to make them correct the problems. Do you know what happened on one of the projects? We used to carry at the first time when the phones were just coming out, the walkie-talkie phones. Oh, they were like $4,000 for 2 phones. Unbelievable pricing. But they weren't really telephones at the time. You know, and so what happened, we would have on our walkie-talkie telephones, anytime we'd say code red, our supervisors in our office, they could hear us when we pressed that button. We said code red, code red. That meant that all of the coalitions that I had spoken about earlier, they had all converged on my project, on this particular project here in Queens. And at the time, there were Muslim brothers, and there were black brothers, and there were Jamaican brothers. We had already hired the particular people. That was us. That was who we were. Who else was going to give them work if I didn't give them the work? That was so important to my plight that I stay. I didn't try, you know, the system had offered me other deals, good deals. And I didn't necessarily come on a board because I was brought up in a different mindset. I wasn't looking for money. But I wasn't looking, I had no idea that I was going to be a developer. I had no idea of how high I was going to go in the line of construction. But do you know what? There were different elements still that the system to keep us down had. All over the place. The system had so many arms, and I hope today the arms are being cut off one by one. But do you know? I don't know if you're familiar with bonding. To have a job bond, the bonding company has to state that you your job will be covered if you fail and you bonded up to this certain amount. That became a very big issue on minorities being able to get contracts because they couldn't get bonds. And it's not because some of them weren't qualified, but it was because of our skin color. And I'm going to tell you, it is a sure thing. Because I've been through some trenches in which, do you know, Deborah Wright, the young lady who helped me and who was one of those who chose my organization, do you know what happened? Oh, the banks. And the reason why I had went to Freedom National, because they were a black organization. But let me give you an idea of what happened. One, we had a bank here that I was banking, Equitable Federal Savings and Loan. I think I remember that was the name. I had been banking there for about 10 years, put my little bit of change in there. This was in the beginning of time. I went to them, I said, listen, I need a cash flow to have some money to pay my man. I'm going to get this job, and I need some cash. They turned me down. I turned all my documents in and everything. They turned me down. So what happened? Once they saw my name in the papers, now I get a phone call from the president of the bank, and let's go to lunch. Let's have lunch together because we think we have an organization, because they had said they don't have a department that handles construction loan, cash flow business. They don't have that. I said, okay, thank you. But now they have it. After they saw my name in the paper, now they've got an organization, a department that will do it. So I didn't accept the idea because by then we had gone further. We had went to Chemical Bank at the time. And Chemical Bank was now on board to give the millions of dollars that was going to be needed to produce the different kinds of jobs. The one of the things that happened was, speaking of Deborah Wright, she went into Chemical Bank and she had brought different people to them. The day before I and 3 other minorities went into the bank, she had just taken a white Caucasian fella in whose father was in construction, a young guy, and they gave him the loan. She was a part of that. So now, you know what happened? The partnership makes the presentation to the bank with our names. It was 5 of us at the time. And they started giving the diagnostic setting on, they turned over, they had their envelope, they said, this person had a bankruptcy about 10 years ago and we can't take him. Then they turned over another one. This one had too many car violations and we can't take him. I mean, they were making up all kinds of, and they turned over the 4 different names to refuse them. And then what happened? I mean, this will blow your mind. What happened was that they turned over my name, R.W. Hall, General Contractors, Inc. And they said, we need a little bit more time. We need a little bit more time with this company. And Deborah sits there and she says, well, why, Kathy Weil? Why? What is the case? Well, we can't find anything on him. Is he in business? And they had all of my documentation, all of my customers, everybody they communicated with, my previous customers. They asked me, were they my relatives? Because everyone had something good to say. about my little company and organization.
Mhm.
So it was astounding. Deborah Wright said, "Wait a minute. I brought in this white boy yesterday." She came right out. "I brought in this white boy yesterday that had half the credentials that RW has, and you took him, and you're going to mean to say that you need more time to because you can't find anything on Hall?" That's well, let us look at this again. In that particular day,
Mhm.
it was accepted just the same through
Mhm.
discussion and through someone being there pushing the system
To do the right thing.
to do the right thing. And that was Chemical Bank. But do you know what happened on my during my tenure of working with them and being a part of collecting their money and paying their money back after several projects and stuff went on? Do you know I left the bank when I turned down the 70? They offered me $40 million to do any project I wanted to do. They took me to lunch to tell me that. They didn't want to give me $3 million in the beginning. I was flabbergasted. I said, "Now you mean to tell me you will give me $40 million for any project I wanted?" Of course, I got to pay them back, but they made money off of me.
Mhm.
None of my homeowners complained. I built the 200 houses. None of them complained about anything to the partnership. We had our development, and all of the people, all of the employees were minorities. I was so proud of our accomplishment,
Mhm.
that it was really something. But for the generations that are a part of this and was working in with the city of New York, I would tell them not to be a part of the work schedule for the city of New York. They will be put out of business. I used to hold small seminars
Mhm.
for new up and coming contractors who wanted to participate because of the bad pitfalls
Mhm.
and the lack of paying the money. They said, "Oh yes, definitely within," but it wasn't so.
Right.
I was proof. I had other contractors involved in the different organizations who could swear to it. It was truly a challenge. But what path do you take when you're trying? I had gone as far as I could go. The mob wouldn't let me go any further, and the bonding element wouldn't let me go any further. I couldn't go any further. So it was time for me to retire,
Mhm.
of that industry. So I thank God for being put on a path that I had no idea that I would be able to be here talking to you about different things in life, sharing with you to get an understanding and to give an understanding to the younger brothers that are coming up who are going to try to be a part of the construction industry. It might have changed. 15 years ago, I went to another meeting of black organization. I said, "Are you telling me nothing's changed since I left?"
No, I think
Nothing's changed. I mean, you're saying the same things we said years ago. What does it take to make a change in our society? That's part of it.
And do you feel like that was, had you not had that experience at a young age and never gone and never been had that incited in your spirit, um, what your life would have been, how different it would have been.
Right.
Like
Yes,
what
yes.
would have been the thing that prevailed you to go and be able to stand in your just keep your word in everything.
Perseverance. Well, what has taken place in this particular time when every once in a while, maybe every 3 months, someone will pull up to me on the road and say, Mr. Hall, and they tap me on the shoulder, or they say, Mr. Hall, oh, I'd like to thank you so much for, hiring me back when, and I was on a boat, and the day after I got off the boat, you hired me.
Right.
You hired me with your crew and everything, and now I'm doing this, and I'm a construction contractor, and this. I've had a number of fellas mention and tell me their experiences of life have come from the beginning of what I had taught
Right.
them
Right.
and what I had made
good for.
arrangements with them. It was truly, truly wonderful. A guy pulled up, and see, when I see them, I can't necessarily remember everybody's name,
They
but I
remember
know.
yours.
I said, "Oh yeah, you are such and such," and like, believe it or not, in my office here, this became my office, and when I retired, I had a area in my back of my office, which we used to meet homeowners, and it was not the conference room, but like a hall, a meeting hall. And a person that I had no idea what I had represented, it was Paul, Saint Peter. What's Paul's name? Anyhow, Paul became a minister, and he told me when he got off the boat also, I had given him a job, and I had no idea. And he said, I'd like to thank you so much. And then he told me that after I allowed him to do his ministry in my hall back here.
Wow.
He had his hall here for about a year and a half.
Right.
He was able to develop and he became, what's the next step? Bishop. He became a bishop
Right.
from coming from this location, going to Rockaway, I think, and then he found was able to get another place, a church.
Right.
Then he was able to get a church. He had moved up in the line, and his life and his path was really elevating. But no longer than 5 months, 6 months after he left here, he developed cancer. Well, he had it all the time, and he passed on.
Wow.
And I said, what is it, God? What is it, spirits? What makes a person have to leave with all of the goodness that he has portrayed and done for people? What is it that takes that person away from doing his duty on this earth? He had a mission. Part of that mission was touching me. Part of my mission was touching him. And now, in later years, in time that's happening, I am being touched at this time. I am being touched by something very special. And I will now extend it. Unlike any other time in my life, I'm experiencing vision of understanding. And I'm experiencing things that is telling me. See, before I was just doing it,
Right.
doing things.
Right.
I was doing it to keep working, and you know what? Keep my men working.
Right.
I had family before it was first just to feed my son and my wife and me. That was how it started, just to put food on the table. But then it turned into, I gotta find another job. I gotta find another job.
Right,
Why?
right.
In order to feed these 6 guys, family, to feed them, because now they depending on me working.
Right.
And you know, one day, what was very difficult after I had done this project, and one of my foremans, he was a foreman in estimating and organizing. He said, "Oh, my daughter's getting ready to go to college now." Oh my God. You know, I felt the pain as if it was pain for my own daughter that I had to send to college, because now I gotta make some more money to give him so he can send his daughter to college.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on me so many times.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that it was all for me each that I needed the money, It kept being that I needed the money in order to give the money,
Right.
make the money move for other people.
Right. You were the vehicle to provide for others.
That's right.
I want to thank my guest, Curly Hall, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Like It Was. I'm Ketriana Yvonne.
Free.